before we can use the PyMongo with the server, we need to install the Flask. And how can we use a Flask? I'll tell you in this video clip. At first, I'll like to start with Colab 1. So this is the easiest way to do it. So we can start with the structure that quite simple. In Colab, the Flask is already installed, so you can use from Flask, import Flask, and then you have to create an app one. This is a variable app that is the Flask, and get the name here, and then you can use this one. This structure is very important. This is the annotation, app.root and slash, and under this directory, this is the directory. This is a home directory. So you have to define function that get something, get input from the directory, and then return. The easiest way is just return the HTML1, because we design Flask to be returned as like a server. So you can return the HTML1, or you can return the JSON. It is for today's class, this is just the introduction to the tools. So you can in this video clip, I just show you just an example. Okay, so this one is the first function that responds the directory, the home directory. If you need another path like sub directory 1, for example, sub 1, you have to create the app.root and sub 1, and define the function that responds to the request from to sub 1. So this one, the function here, I will return just the header, hello from sub 1. Okay, so that's all. This one is the Colab one. So what you have to do is, if you run it using app.run, something like that, you may face, of course, it will start in this cell, right? So the best way to test it on your Colab is you can use the threading. The idea of threading is same as the one that you know from Java or other languages, that it will create the thread, and that thread can run, and you can go to the other cell. So I will import threading and use the threading.thread, and the target one is app.run. This is the variable app. Okay, so the app.run, and the argument is the host to be 0.0.0.0, and the port number 80, and .start. So we will create the thread like this. Okay, so at first you have to make Colab known that this is the app from the Flask one, and here, once the Colab known already know this, you have to create a thread. Once you run it, so there's some prompt to show you that the Flask is running on this server. So we set the debug mode to be off, and then it tells you that it's running on the host one. So now we have to call it, but for the Colab, you know that the Colab is a VM, right? It is under like the complex environment in Google. So the best way to test it is you can run it using, like, to call it in this Colab. So you can import request here, this line, and then use request.get, and this is the IP of the VM1. So you can use this IP for your Colab also. Okay, so you can test it using like the 172.28.0.2 and then request.get and then print the result. This is the result returned from your server. So you can see that it will go to the directory of the hello from Flask. That is the home directory, right? Okay, this one is the home directory. And if you run using sub1, it will return hello from sub1. That is this directory. Okay, so it's quite simple, right? Okay, now next I'll show you how can we write the Flask, your Flask on your machine. This one is from Colab, right? It's easy, right? So Flask is running on your machine, but if you need to correct the code, you have to restart your runtime because you use threading, right? So thread will run always run, and you didn't stop it. So the best way, the easiest way is you have to restart your runtime. Okay, so next, guys, I'll show you how can you run your program on your machine. At first, I will use the code here. At first, you have to, if you didn't install Flask on your machine yet, so you have to install it. So the best way for Mac or Windows is like you can use Pip Install. And in the case that you use Python 3, maybe you need to use Pip 3. Install Flask. And in my case, on my machine, I've already installed it via the Anaconda. So everything is fine on my machine. So this is a Flask one. And then you have to create your app.py file. And this is the Flask one. So I use from Flask, import Flask, and then app is Flask and underscore and name here, and you have to define the root, the one that same as the one that you did in Google Colab. So once you create your app.py, you can use any editor that you familiar, and then you have to save your .py in some place. For my case, I run it here, so this one is my directory. Okay, so I have the Flask, I have the app.py, and then for the Moland, for the newest one, you have to set environment to the Flask. You have to use this line, set Flask app equal to app.py. Okay, so Flask app is app.py. You have to set it like this. In your Windows, if you run on Windows, you have to follow the instruction here. You have to follow the instruction here. If you use the command line, Windows PowerShell, you have to set the environment here, and then use Flask run. Okay, in Windows, if you have any problems, you can ask me. Okay, so once you run it, now if you already set Flask app is app.py, now you can run Flask run. That's all. So you can see that on my screen there is some prompt that is same as the one that shown in Google Colab, but it tells you that it running on this machine IP. So if you want to try it, you have to go back to your browser and then use this URL, and then can you see this is the home directory, right? And then if you call sub1, this is sub1. Okay, so now I think if you can run it, I think it's okay. It's okay. You can run it on your machine, on your local machine, on your Colab. And the best way that I will show you in your Colab, maybe you need to run it on Colab. I think it's like easier. Okay, but to make your Colab be able to like to be tested by calling from external, you have to use the ng-rock. So the first one is you have to import the Flask ng-rock first. So you have to use from Flask ng-rock import run with ng-rock. And the other line is from Flask course import course and cross origin. And you have to add these two lines in your program to make Colab know that you will run it in course and run with ng-rock. Before you can use Flask ng-rock, you have to use the pip install first. So pip install Flask ng-rock and pip install Flask course. Run it. So it will install the Flask ng-rock and install the Flask course. At this time you have to, because this is the definition of our function, right? So this time you have to use app.run, and that's all. Once you run it, now you can see that we have another URL that is from ngrock.io. So you can call this one here. You have to use this URL instead. Can you see? Now we can run it on any browser, same as the one that you did with your local machine. But this time you can send this URL to your friends to test it, so it can be accessed from any computer. So you can test it using sub1 also. This one is hello from sub1. So this is a service from ngrock.io. So I hope that you enjoy it and try to prepare everything, and we will start running Flask and PyMongo. See you guys.